I'll restore our Navy to the size needed to fulfill our missions by building 15 ships per year, including 3 submarines. I'll implement effective missile defenses to protect against threats.
Mitt Romney comes out in favor of more defense spending while giving a speech in a swing state with an economy largely supported by defense spending. The agenda starts right now.
Now, Nevada's premier source for political commentary. Informed opinions about the issues affecting you. From the right, Elizabeth Crum. From the left, Hugh Jackson. This is The Agenda.
Good afternoon. I'm Hugh Jackson, the Agenda's commentator from the left.
And I'm Elizabeth Crum, the commentator from the right.
Mitt Romney shared his sweeping vision for American foreign policy this morning. Nutshell, spend an enormous amount of money that America doesn't have on new weaponry America doesn't need, and then let Israel tell America when and where to use it. Later in the program, we'll be joined by the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, one of the right-wing organizations backed by local Republican financier Sheldon Adelson, and we'll talk about the group's effort to elect Mitt Romney president, including ads that blast Barack Obama for not being a friend of Israel at all.
But first, in the midst of his post-debate bounce, Mitt Romney makes a major foreign political speech in Virginia. But the Obama campaign was ready and is countering with a new attack ad to go on the air soon in Virginia. The Agenda's national correspondent, Tori Dunnan, joins us live in Washington with a report. Good Monday morning to you, Tori.
And good Monday afternoon and East Coast time right back at you. But basically this could be considered a preview of the third presidential debate, which is focusing on foreign policy. And today Mitt Romney focused on just that.
Hope is not a strategy.
While standing in front of a sea of white at the Virginia Military Institute, Mitt Romney accused the president of not leading at a global level, particularly with the attack in Libya.
It is our responsibility and the responsibility of the president to use America's greatest power to shape history, not to lead from behind. Unfortunately, that's exactly where we find ourselves in the Middle East under President Obama.
A CNN ORC poll shows President Obama leads Romney by 7 points when it comes to who would better handle foreign policy. But that lead didn't stop the Obama campaign from releasing a new foreign policy attack ad today in Virginia. It highlights Romney's trip abroad this summer and his comments on the Libya consulate attack, calling them reckless and amateurish.
Showed an extraordinary lack of presidential character.
Romney's trying to turn the tide by laying out a foreign policy plan, touching on everything from tightening nuclear weapons sanctions in Iran to increasing military spending.
For the sake of peace, we must make clear to Iran through actions, not just words, that their nuclear pursuit will not be tolerated.
And Elizabeth, the Obama campaign also held a conference call right after Mitt Romney's big speech today, saying that they thought it was confusing.
Tori, I want to ask you this. Some of us are still talking about the debate from last week, which Romney, in the words of most pundits, easily won. He seems to be in a pretty good mood since that debate, but did his performance make any change in the major national polls?
Well, Elizabeth, we're finally starting to see some of those polls come out, and this is actually a new Gallup national poll we're taking a look at. It shows that Mitt Romney really did get a bump after that first debate, because this poll looks at 3 days before the debate and 3 days after the debate. Right before, the president led by 3 points, and then, of course, after, right now we're in this dead heat, both of them at 47%. But Elizabeth, and of course another thing that we have to talk about when we talk about this poll is it's just one of many that will be coming out this week.
And when you factor in the margin of error, it's also still a pretty tight race. All right, Tori, thanks for that report. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon. So -3 for Obama, +2 for Romney. I guess so that's a 5 points that brings them right back to a tie, which is where they were at the beginning of the summer.
He might get some more bounce out of this, who knows, although I think that he actually poured cold water on his little boomlet with this speech this morning. He talks about, actions, not just words, and yet this whole speech delineated nothing that was substantially different from a policy standpoint than what Obama has pursued with respect to Iranian sanctions, other Mideast policy. The only big difference is he says we're going to spend a lot of money that we don't have on warships.
I think, I watched parts of the speech, read the speech twice, and I have to say, I think it maybe was a little bit of a missed opportunity on Mitt Romney's part, because when you say you're going to give a major foreign policy address, and you're
hyped this up a lot.
They did hype it, and when you're 1 month away from the presidential race, you have an opportunity to really be an attack dog on some issues, especially what went on with this attack on the embassy and the consulate recently in Libya. We've got some facts now that we didn't have then. I said at the time Romney jumped the gun, but he would no longer be jumping the gun if he right now pointed to a number of failures in American policy that I think led up to those attacks and made them possible. And I didn't hear that from him this morning, and I was surprised.
Yes, but Elizabeth, his jumping the gun included the words that the Obama administration's first response was to sympathize with our attackers. And that was just a despicable reaction from the Romney campaign, just from the start. That needs to be put out there. But what we heard today is the same type of bellicose bluster that we heard throughout the Republican primaries, perhaps toned down a little bit for a general election audience. But Romney's big message seems to be, I'm going to be big and tough and strong because the Republicans are the daddy party, so vote for me. And I'm not sure that Americans are really all that comfortable with going back to a policy and an attitude, this swaggering, chest-thumping, fist-pumping swagger that we saw with the Republicans before.
Well, one thing we're definitely hearing from Romney is that he supports more defense spending as opposed to less. As we know, that's a matter on the table as these sequestration cuts approach.
All right. Well, we will continue our discussion of Romney's speech with a Romney supporter, Matthew Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition, right after this. Welcome back. In his foreign policy speech this morning, Mitt Romney blasted President Obama's foreign policy, yet delineated very few specific ways that policy under a Romney administration would be any different. For instance, here's Romney on the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
I'll recommit America to the goal of a democratic, prosperous Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with the Jewish state of Israel.
In other words, Romney will have the same policy that American presidents have had for years. But while Romney didn't differ with Obama on foreign policy in this morning's speech, he did differ from, well, himself. Here's Romney discussing the peace process during his famous hidden camera remarks at that fundraiser.
And I look at the Palestinians not wanting to see peace anyway, for political purposes, committed to the destruction and elimination of Israel. And these thorny issues, and I say, there's just no way. And so what you do is you say you move things along the best way you can, you hope for some degree of stability, but you recognize this is going to remain an unsolved problem. And we kick the ball down the field and hope that ultimately somehow something will happen and resolve it.
We are joined now by Matthew Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Welcome to the program, sir. I was looking over your website earlier today. It looks to me like U.S. Israeli policy plays the central role in your organization's support for Mitt Romney. So perhaps he's told you which of these contradictory positions he actually believes. Does he think an agreement is unthinkable, that there's just no way, as he put it, and that the best we can hope is to kick the ball down the field, as he said at that fundraiser? Or does he believe it is worthwhile to broker a two-state solution, as he said this morning?
Well, the two things are not mutually exclusive, Hugh. I mean, the reality is that, of course, Mitt Romney would like to broker a deal. But what he said and what was evident in the video that you showed is that you need two parties for peace. And the one thing that we have seen over the last several years, quite frankly, is an unwillingness on the part of the Palestinians to enter into a meaningful peace negotiation with the Israelis. A peace negotiation which brings an end to the terror and violence, which brings an end to the incitement among the Palestinian people, and ends the daily barrage of rockets that fly into Israel every day from Gaza.
Can you tell us, though, do you know then if Romney is really as defeatist as he expressed himself to be at that fundraiser, where there's just no hope, there's just no way that it's going to happen?
I don't think it's a defeatist mentality. I think it's a realistic mentality given the existing facts as they currently exist. I think he will work hard, and I think we all hope that we will get a change of leadership or a change of direction among the Palestinians to really work toward having a meaningful and lasting and secure peace with the Israelis. It is absolutely abundantly clear that if you look at all the facts, the Israelis have bent over backwards to try and bring peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The problem lies in that the Israelis don't have a real partner for peace.
Mitt Romney, I think, is pretty clearly trying to score some present-day political points by criticizing President Obama on foreign policy, and in particular on Israel. I want to take a look at another clip from this morning's speech and then get your reaction.
The relationship between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel, for example, our closest ally in the region, has suffered great strains. The President explicitly stated that his goal was to put daylight between the United States and Israel, and he succeeded. This is a dangerous situation that has set back the hope of peace in the Middle East and emboldened our mutual adversaries, especially Iran.
Mr. Brooks, I have sort of a two-part question. It's no secret because Netanyahu's been so bold and vocal about his sort of his displeasure with President Obama, and he's thrown some very nice smiles, I think, Mitt Romney's way. I want to ask you this, though. Isn't all this talk on Israel on both sides of the aisle, whether it's from Romney or President Obama, isn't it really just a difference of rhetoric in general? As Hugh pointed out, I want to ask you specifically in terms of military support or money, what did President Obama do that was different, that was so egregious? What did he pull back from Israel over the past 4 years?
Well, there's a couple things. I think number one, first and foremost, he sent a signal. He went to two things in particular. Number one, he went to Cairo. And one of the first speech, the international speech he gave as president, he went to Cairo and gave a speech to the Muslim community talking about how he wanted to transform relations with the Muslim world. There was no real mention about the need for the Muslim community to embrace or to accept the State of Israel. There was no messaging in terms of encouraging them to move forward. But more importantly, and there was a big story in the Washington Post about this, which did a huge scathing expose on the Obama administration's failure in the Middle East. His speech on the eve of Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to the United States, where he totally changed the paradigm of the peace process by calling for Israel to return to the 67 borders with land swaps as a precondition for peace, totally played into the Palestinians, made them intransigent, and virtually ensured that there's not going to be any movement on the peace process.
But haven't the Palestinians been, dug in for hundreds of years? I mean, seriously, are we really going to try to say, I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit?
They have been dug in, but now you have the President of the United States negotiating for him against the Israelis. You have him going from the role of an honest broker to actually being an advocate and negotiating on behalf of the Palestinians prior to them even sitting down. Now, everybody knows that some ultimate formulation is going to come out as a result of the 67 lines, but that's for the parties to negotiate.
So
that's not for the president.
What Elizabeth asked you was she asked you for some examples of actual deeds, of actual actions. That's what Mr. Romney was saying this morning, actions, not words. And what actions Obama had taken that had upset you. You didn't mention anything from a policy standpoint. You mentioned words. But with respect to the 67 borders, the full quote, as you well know, is the borders of Israel and Palestine should be based on the 1967 borders with mutually agreed land swaps. That phrase, by definition, means that negotiated borders would not follow the 67 borders. As has been pointed out time and again, and also this is exactly the same policy that the United States has been following since at least 1992.
I disagree with that. That is never been.
You can disagree, but that's the fact.
That's ultimately the policy.
This is the same policy that George H.W. Bush established.
But look at what George W. Bush changed all that. If you look at the letters that George W. Bush wrote in exchange with Prime Minister Sharon, there were a number of very key points which outline American policy as it relates to this. And he said, number one, the borders will not be based on 67 borders, taking into account the realities on the ground, including natural growth. They talk about no right of return. I mean, those were monumental letters that exchanged, and this administration has failed to acknowledge that as being the current administration policy. A lot of people in the Jewish community want to know if this administration still stands by the Bush-Sharon letters.
All right, we've got to take a break. We'll be back with more on Israel and American politics right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to the agenda. We're here with Matt Brooks, the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, the largest Republican Jewish group in the nation. Mr. Brooks, your group has put $6.5 million into an anti-Obama air and ground campaign, and by that I mean billboards and television ads. You're doing this in key swing states, including Florida, Ohio, and Nevada. I'd like to show the viewers the ad that's running here on the Nevada airwaves, and then we'll talk about it.
In the last election, I voted for Barack Obama. I guess I fell for hope and change, like everybody else. The hope is gone, and the change didn't happen, and I think what changed has changed for the worst. I don't think Barack Obama is a friend of Israel at all. The economy is in a horrible situation. The kids are graduating college without jobs. You see so many houses in foreclosure. The debt is out of control. I think we can do better than Barack Obama.
The Republican Jewish Coalition is responsible for this advertisement. Join us.
Mr. Brooks, you may not be aware of this, but about a week ago in a debate here in Nevada between Representative Shelley Berkley and Senator Dean Heller, the only mention Shelley Berkley, a Democrat, made of President Obama was when she talked about calling him up on the phone and sort of reading him the riot act, so to speak, on the policy on Israel. So you're actually getting a little bit of a boost here from the Democratic side of the aisle on Israel. But why do you think these type of buyer's remorse, so to speak, ads are effective as opposed to other types of attack ads?
I think they're effective because in the case of the ads that we're running, these are real people telling their real stories. Rennie, who you saw in that ad, is a lifelong Democrat. She's never voted for a Republican in her life. She's going to vote for Mitt Romney this time around because she's so disappointed in Barack Obama, not just because of his positions on Israel, but also on the way he's handled the economy. And here in Nevada, I mean, it is very clear this is one of the hardest hit states in the country in terms of the Obama economy. And I think there are a lot of people who voted for Barack Obama in 2008 who have buyer's remorse and are not going to be voting for him in 2012.
I want to ask you about whether this buyer's remorse is translating into the polls. There's no doubt that some voters and some of the Jewish voters among them are disillusioned with President Obama on the economy in Israel. But a poll taken just a few weeks ago shows that Jewish voters are still supporting the president in pretty large numbers. It's a Gallup poll taken between July and September showing that Jewish voters still support President Obama at about a level of 70%, only 25% support for Mitt Romney. Those are about the same numbers we saw in the presidential race the last time around at this same time of year when McCain was only picking up about 25% of the Jewish vote. So if President Obama's been so awful, how do you explain these poll numbers?
Well, first of all, these poll numbers, the Gallup poll that you cite was done right after the Democratic convention, at the height of Obama's bump, and at a time when Mitt Romney was having a real difficult time in his campaign. The numbers that are coming out now are much stronger.
What do you hope to achieve? Where do you hope to see the Jewish vote when we look at the exit polls?
Sure. Our goal over the years, we've gone over the last 4 out of the 5 last national elections, the Republicans have gained market share in the Jewish community. We've gone from a low of 11% of the Jewish vote in 1992 to 16% to 19% to 24%, down to 22% in 2008. And I think that Barack Obama is on track and will receive the lowest amount of support in the Jewish community than any modern-day president.
We're just about out of time. Who is stronger on Israel, Shelley Berkley or Dean Heller?
Oh, Dean Heller. Well, I think they're look. You know, I think they're both good friends of Israel. But Dean Heller will be able to get things done because he will have a President Romney to work with, and we're going to have a Republican Senate, and it's far better to be in the majority and get things done. And Dean Heller will be a great friend of Israel in the majority in the United States, working with President Romney.
All right, Mr. Brooks, thank you for your time. We're out of it. We really appreciate you joining us today. If you want to learn more about Mr. Brooks' group, you can go to www.rjchq.org. And we will be back with a look at the busy political week ahead right after this. Welcome back to the agenda. So a big political week in terms of visits and debates coming up. We'll be covering it through the week. Okay, so President Clinton will be here tomorrow campaigning and presumably maybe doing a little fundraising both for Representative Berkley and for John Oseguera in CT3. I think looking to help him a little bit here. Yeah. We've got Craig Romney in town for Team Romney as a surrogate. We've got
Nobody cares about that.
Oh, maybe they do. We've got 2 big debates. We've got the vice presidential debate Thursday night. That'll be right here on NBC from 6 to 8, and then we've got the Heller-Berkley debate, the second debate. That's a Nevada Broadcasters Association event.
Thursday.
Also Thursday night.
So they're not running concurrently, hopefully.
I'm not sure when they're being broadcasted. Yeah, we'll have that information for you.
The second Senate debate can't possibly be worse than the first one was. The first one was deplorable, pathetic. It made me embarrassed to be part of the political media-industrial complex here, as a matter of fact. Anyway, coming up tonight on Ralston Reports at 7:30, international resort and gaming mogul Steve Wynn rants about about President Obama in the first part of John's exclusive interview.
Can't wait to see that. All right, and tomorrow on the agenda, we'll take a look at some of the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad political ads that are up on the Nevada airwaves.
That should be good. All right, that's it for today. I'm Hugh Jackson.
Thanks for watching. I'm Elizabeth Crum. Have a great afternoon.